Joining me on the Neil Wilkins Podcast today is Bryan Kramer. Now, Bryan is or has been called the Zen Master to digital marketers by Forbes. I mean, that is quite an accolade, but proven, though, by being a two-time best-selling author and Forbes contributor, as well as somebody who has literally traveled the world giving keynote speeches, is an executive trainer and coach, and a renowned business strategist. Somebody who is very, very experienced and very keen to share the concept of what we're talking about today, human to human, H2H marketing. Now, if you haven't heard of this, we're going to be impressing you by a whole new way of thinking about marketing communications. So welcome to the show, Bryan.
What a wonderful intro. Thank you so much. And Neil, I'm excited to talk with you today. Thank you.
I think we're really on the same page here, Bryan, because what you are talking about here, when you talk about human to human, H2H, is something that I don't think I've probably described it so succinctly and so poignantly as human to human, but it is something that I've been really passionate about over 3.5 decades of time spent in marketing, with all these kind of misnomers, all this misdirection, all this lack of clarity over how to build relationships with customers and other stakeholders. So human to human, it sounds so simple, but it's so profound. Where did that kind of originate from for you?
It came from, we had a marketing agency for over 20 years, almost 25 years. And for years, we would talk about a human to human concept or human design and the customer at the other end, and what is it going to take to have a conversation, and how do we get to the conversation? And so that became kind of our rally cry at our agency. Now fast forward into, I think, around 2013, 2014, social media became a lot more prevalent than it was. It's not that far ago that social media came onto the scene, which is kind of ironic to how fast things moved to today. But at the time, it was really interesting because it was the first time that we had a voice as a customer, and we were able to have a conversation globally. We were able to break down geofences and barriers, and we were able to have a conversation between anyone within a company to anyone outside of a company. I mean, it was just this whole thing, and it turned the world upside down, as you probably remember. And that's what changed. That changed, the game for all marketers, because all of a sudden we went from the old radio, TV, newspaper, maybe email marketing to all these different channels and all these different ways that we could now market. I mean, it's hundreds, if not thousands, of different nuances to what we can do. And at the core of it, it's really all about buying from the people we know, like, and trust, as we've all heard before. But if you think about it, it goes all the way back to door-to-door people, salespeople that would come and say, "Hey, buy my vacuum." I mean, so it's even in cave paintings where you see people getting together from different tribes and having conversations. So this has been nothing new. It's just how it's evolved over time, and it's thrown everybody into a bit of a challenge. And so when I started speaking about social media and what the changes made in 2013, 2014, it really resonated so loudly that in one room, it was filled with executives in San Francisco at Bloomberg when I gave a keynote, and they took a picture of the slide behind me that said, "There's no B2B or B2C, it's H2H." And that picture and all those pictures posted on social media, and I got over 22 million impressions globally in lots of different languages. So from that point forward, it was like my life had changed. While I had been trying and shouting for this from the rooftops, right place, right time, and pushing forward created something for me. So that escalated, and I can go on forever, but that's really where it came from.
That must have been such a profound moment where you thought, I'm onto a thing here. And as you say, it is something that is just so shockingly obvious, but also it's shockingly almost embarrassing from a marketer's perspective that so few of us are still actually doing it. It is something so clear when you hear it described as you describe it there, Bryan. But the point is, I think a lot of people are still working from the old textbooks, the whole B2B marketing. And I hear this a lot. I'm in business to business marketing, so I market to that business over there. It's like, but hold on, the business is not going to reply to you. Do you wonder why you don't actually get responses? So you're sending to info at or something like that. And people are still surprised that they're not getting success. Why do you think there's so many marketers are still working to that old paradigm? Because I'm sure you see it, with your clients and the people that you engage with. It feels too old school. People haven't just necessarily embraced this properly.
It's been a lifelong struggle for every marketer, salesperson, business person to put in the effort. It's a huge amount of effort when you think about it, to build a relationship with another human being. It's peeling the onion layer to get to know somebody and really get to being more intimate in a relationship with another person or people or group. Intimate meaning intimacy, or into me you see. And so when we create that as marketers, we're looking for two different directions. One is, how do I build a relationship? The second one is, how can I automate to get to the relationship? And there might even be a third, which is, how can I automate and not have a relationship, which is the ultimate demise of most marketing campaigns. Most, not all, but most. And so, and what do we do with all that? Like, how do we create a way that we can still have kind of the best of all worlds? It depends what type of business that you're in, but at the end of the day, people really want to see that there's humans behind this, that they really care, that there's a large amount of connection that they can get by being a customer, and not just any customer, but a customer that you care about. So how do you do that? There's lots of different ways that you can do that. I mean, they're just like endless ways that you can do that. But do we do it? No, not most of the time. What we do is we focus on the B2B portion, right? Like business to business in terms of client acquisition and, click rates and funnels and all the different things that come with that. Or on the B2B side, where we're focused on, point of sale or point of purchase, and all the different ways that we focus on having us represent our product represented at storefront. But when you combine the two, at the end of the day, the customer doesn't care about either of those. The customer just cares about the connection to the company and the product that they purchased. So if you can circumvent all of this craziness, these acronyms of B2B, B2C, whatever, P2P, all these different things, and really start to understand what does the customer really want, which is connection and three pillars, which I can talk about at some point. But these are the things that they really care about the most. And that's where they need to have a seat at the table, not just the acronym creators.
That's an interesting one for me, because I think having that seat at the table is a kind of a concept. I think a lot of people talk about putting customer first, and we hear this has become a bit of a cliche that, yes, we're customer centric marketers, or yes, our business puts, the customer first in, all of our considerations. Oh, but by the way, now we're going to revert back to actually doing the day job, tactical campaigns to sell something. So actually then when you dig, sort of below the surface, or you open the hood and you look inside, actually the reality is very different to what is being almost promised. Did you feel that too many businesses, and I think particularly in the B2B space, let's talk about this, where they're selling to other businesses and they're in a sort of a supply chain maybe situation, do you think too many of those are almost kidding themselves that they're actually customer centric? Because if you look at it as an outsider, you can very quickly get to the evidence that says, actually, you say you're customer focused, but you're not really listening. You're not really building relationships. You're actually still selling in the traditional, I've got a product, I want you to buy it. Do you see that might be one of these, I guess, failures actually in this sort of this move towards intimate relationships that you describe?
Absolutely. When you are willing and able to be a customer that puts your voice out there and says, I love this product. This or this service or whatever that a company is offering, you're giving voice to something that somebody did right. And let's be honest, most people are actually critiquing or criticizing products and brands, not raising them up. That's not typically our go-to voice. So if somebody takes a moment just to praise something, that's pretty rare. That's something that we can take a moment to highlight and say thank you, which is very easy for any brand to do, and quite often a missed opportunity, as you pointed out. So I think, to your point, I've done it. I'm an advocate for like getting on to airplanes or getting into situations or into stores or purchasing a new whatever. My wife would tell you I purchased too many pieces of software. And so having all of these things, I tend to do that quite often because I want to see where is the brand going to, and who are the people within the brand that are going to help celebrate with me to celebrate their product that I'm now highlighting. So I'll walk in and, well, I used to tweet, but now, I'll post on Instagram or any number of the social media platforms. And it's interesting because it's really like 1 or maybe 2 times out of 10 that I hear back from them and they say, thank you, or, oh, that's wonderful, or welcome to our store. Let us know if you need something, or, hey, did you know about this? And here's a link that'll get you into a little bit deeper about what you want to know, like whatever. I mean, it could be like 1,000 different combinations of, we want to celebrate you or celebrate the moment. But one, maybe 2 out of 10, I'd hear back. And that's pretty representative of offline too. When you think about how a brand behaves online, it's kind of their body language. It's their social body language. And that's how they typically are. Not all the time, but most of the time, their cultural behavior is driving that behavior. So we're not going to change it by changing social behavior. We're going to change it by changing cultural behavior so that everyone feels like Wendy's or a number of brands that are really super human, and you feel like you want to be a part of them. That'll do that. I mean, one time I flew to an IBM conference to keynote, and I took a picture of my iPhone being plugged in, my laptop being connected to Wi-Fi, and my cup of coffee, saying I was on my way to Florida. Oh my God, I have everything I need. Thank you, Virgin Airlines. And I miss Virgin Airlines, Virgin America. They're no longer around. Virgin Atlantic maybe is. So, but anyway, they tweeted back and they said, you're welcome. They took it upon themselves to see that I was going to Florida and that I was going to speak at the IBM conference, which I didn't actually say, and said, good luck at the conference, IBM conference. We can't wait to see you shine. Oh my God.
Wow.
You
That's
broke my human to human model and said, and went beyond it. You didn't, it wasn't creepy because I threw it out there. And they also said, if there's anything we can do, please let us know. 2 minutes later, they must have contacted somehow, or somebody saw it, or I don't know how it happened because I didn't get a chance to ask, but they came by with a thank you card written saying, hey, thanks for letting the world know about your experience. And one of the people who worked on the plane actually delivered that to me, a handwritten note. I was like, okay, now you just went above and beyond. So these are the kinds of things that really made me virgin. I was a virgin until then. And all of a sudden now I'm like, let's just fly this airline every time. Right. So this is a micro moment. I mean, you think about the macro moments that happen all over the place. These are opportunities.
I love that micro moment, though. I mean, that is so sweet. I mean, and of course, what you've just done there is exactly what the brand owners want you to do, which is advocate. So you've just shared with me, we've now shared with the audience listening to this. Everybody now has got that positive experience. So this spin-off benefit of those little micro moments, the attention that you had, so you're a lifelong supporter, but others are now curious and will go and explore that because they want a piece of the action too. So we know this thing works. Do you think, therefore, that this whole idea about brand building, because that's really those collection of micro moments become building the brand and the brand presence for the medium to longer term, do you think that is more important, therefore, than the short-term focus on just getting sales? Because surely the sales are going to come from the collection of those micro moments making a huge impact. So should our attention as marketers to do this human to human thing be much more focused on the longer term brand piece rather than always just trying to get the next deal?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Adam Grant wrote a wonderful book, and I love Adam. He and I gave our TED Talks, one of our TED Talks together, and he wrote a book called Give and Take. Wonderful, brilliant book. But what I love about it inside is that he showed through research that the takers are the people that through research that the takers are in the middle, and the givers are sitting both at the top and at the bottom in terms of long tail approach. They lose on the short term, and that's why brands don't see it as a winning combination, because it's a long tail game. But through a ton of research and showing how brands and people have won, giving eventually wins out. So they have to sit through the short term a prospect of not being seen as a brand that's actually winning a sale, in order to make it up to the top, where all of a sudden it compounds, and it takes over. And it's, if you look at any case study of a brand that now has sat 20 plus years, it's because they've grown the long tail approach of that level of service. That you can point to anything from an Apple store to name your brand Dove, in their human campaigns, celebrating the imperfection of humans. Every brand that has played that long term of give versus take, in the gives win, is the short term that loses, the long term that wins.
Yeah, so there's a patience thing that comes into play here. And I mean, it's back to your point about the fact that this is relationship intimacy that needs to build over time. You talked about layers of the onion. I mean, that doesn't happen overnight. So I think anybody who's looking to kind of delve deeper into this, and I'd be very interested in those three pillars that you mentioned before. So we will go there in just a second. But I just want to be super clear here about kind of the practicality of what's needed here, is that there is this almost commitment to really slowing everything down, which then builds the brand in those micro moments, which protects you and makes you sustainable in the long term. So that the value of this relationship building comes in the longer term. What's your view, Bryan, about the challenge then that I guess some marketers will be listening to this or watching this and thinking, yeah, that's all very well, Neil and Bryan, you talking about this, but the reality is I've got sales targets to hit. I've got these objectives that, my line manager or the board or the C-suite want me to hit, and I've got to do those. So it's all very well talking about the longer term, but I'm not going to be in a job next month if I don't hit this month's numbers. There is this kind of sweet spot of trying to achieve both, isn't there? How do you see that playing out?
Yeah, well, I'm not saying to pull back your entire marketing campaign and focus just on this as a strategy. This is the long tails approach, right? So if you want to win 5 years from now, 3 years from now, even 2 years from now, depending upon the strategy, you would want to choose this. But also, you're still going to want to do ads and email campaigns and all the typical, whatever channels you choose that are appropriate for you to build on top of your campaign for your company. So they really do want to run concurrently in terms of a strategy. I'd also say meld it together. A lot of companies are not recognizing where the human moments are inside of their current campaigns or inside of their sales approaches. So for instance, you might walk up to a whiteboard and just take 5 or 10 people or 2 people, whatever, just do it yourself, and just map out how many things are going on in a typical campaign that you're running right now. Just take one of your campaigns or a master campaign, and then look back, like take a step back and look at it and say, where are the human moments in all of this? And how can I just add 1 or 2? So I'm not replacing it. I'm just adding to what I'm already doing. Now measure it over 6 months and see how that goes. Are you closing more? Have you noticed repeat clients? Have you noticed clients that are saying more publicly? What are the differences between what you ran 6 months ago and what you ran the next 6 months? And I'm willing to bet you're going to see a difference. And those are going to help you to see what greater capacity you can use this for.
So it's being a lot more thoughtful, really, with the marketing rather than just simply regenerating what you've always done. This is about slowing down, doing a little bit of planning, being a bit more thoughtful over that long-term, short-term balance, and trying to almost find this sweet spot, which you definitely don't get from literally day one. So you're then advocating listening, watching the metrics, evaluating, have I got that split right? I mean, it may well be that you need to change that. Maybe month 2, you go a little bit heavier on the long term, maybe sort of, draw back a little bit on the short term. And then the following month, you see the numbers are showing, actually, we haven't quite got that right. So it's this constant tuning, I guess, isn't it? And learning from listening to the feedback in those relationships. This is where the power comes, isn't it? Of this relationship thing, because they're going to tell you, aren't they? Because much as you will have shared, as you did, the Virgin example, they're going to be giving you that feedback as customers if you're entering into this kind of relationship with them. So it's always then about listening, isn't it?
Listening is a huge part of it. It goes hand in hand with being human. It's how we communicate with each other and it's almost like a non-negotiable if you really want to win. The problem is that people listen at different levels. So there's 3 levels of listening. Level 1 is you're listening, but you're not really listening. You're thinking about other things, which is pretty typical of a lot of us busy people, right? And so we're hearing what you said. We could probably even regurgitate what you said, but we weren't really listening. It's not really something that we're tuned into because we have like 10 other things going on over here. Level 2 is we're listening, but we're thinking about what we're going to say next. So we're still putting the focus back on us and we're still thinking about what we're going to say, but we were tuned in to what you're saying. We're focused in on the conversation itself. And then level 3 is you're listening and intrigued with what the other brand or person is saying. And you're not thinking about anything else, not what you're going to say, not what you're going to do, not how you're going to behave. You are fully locked in, and however you respond will come up when it needs to, when it's time. Until then, you're helping to unpack more of their bags, so to speak, and find out more and create more understanding around what it is that they're saying. That's true listening, is level 3. Now, we all can't be in level 3 all the time, so I would suggest bouncing between 2 and 3. But man, if we could live more in level 3, we'd be much better off.
And it just, I love that. It just gives that sense that anybody can do this. It is about the attention, it's about the patience, it's about the understanding this is the right way of doing it. So those bad habits that as entrepreneurs, business owners, marketers, salespeople that we've got into, which is I've got to do my numbers, they're such a distraction, aren't they? And I am all about data and evidence based, but it's to help the decision making that you're describing rather than just I've got to sell, which is a kind of a hole or a trap that we all seem to have fallen, well, not all of us, but many of us seem to have fallen into. So when you talk about your kind of 3 pillars, these kind of foundational pieces, tell us a little bit more about that, because I'm quite intrigued to know where you're going to take us on that journey.
Sure. This is a little bit of a, excuse me, a little bit of a exercise that I'm going to ask yourself and your listeners who are listening right now to participate in. And if you're following along, whether you want to write down your answer or you just want to speak it out loud, since there's no wrong answer, we will be waiting patiently for how that comes out, or heck, you want to post it online so we could see it. I see you have at Neil Wilkins SX or Wilkins X. So tweet at him or at Bryan Kramer, and we'd love to hear, or anywhere on social. Here's how it goes. Neil, I'm going to ask you 3 questions. So one of the questions is around the first pillar, simplicity. When you think of a simple brand, a brand that embraces simplicity in their behavior, in how they put themselves out there, in a very easily understandable brand, who comes up for you?
First one that came up was Nike. Just do it.
Yeah.
It's
Oh
as
my gosh,
simple as just do it. Whatever you're doing, just do it. Stop
right?
overthinking. Don't procrastinate. Just do it.
Just do it. Yeah. I love that. I love it. Yeah. I mean, I hear a lot of examples around the lowest hanging fruit, and I'm glad you didn't say it, because a lot of people are thinking right now maybe Apple. You can count the number of products on two hands that they have and be able to say what they do. We look at the brand message and we start to take that in over time, but we also associate the brand delivery, the brand experience, the customer experience, the conversations that we see, and how do we associate with perhaps the executive or top executives at the company? Because certainly, who comes to mind in Nike, Phil Knight, right, or Amazon, Jeff Bezos. So we start to associate all these things at once into what makes up the simplicity of this brand. Number two is empathy. What brand has empathy for its customer, or who embraces empathy in the way that they interact or work with others? What comes up for you?
So for me, a brand that is very focused on the in the UK is Ecotricity. So they are a green fuel or green energy provider, and they're very evangelistic. They're very receptive to the audience who buy into them. They're more expensive than the others, but they reinvest their money into wind power and the like, and a load of other new technologies. So they're very, very in tune with their target audience. They're not for everybody, but they're making huge inroads in the work that they're doing. So yeah, to me, they're kind of really aligned with their audience and planet, which is amazing.
Boom. Mic drop on that one. I haven't heard that one before, and I'm going to now look it up because it intrigues me that somebody has gone to that extent to make sure that their brand message is on target in that direction. And who doesn't want to be aligned with a brand like that? You think of also. I'll go to a brand I kind of mentioned before, just to add on to yours, which you might not typically like go to, but they are. In the way that they act, and that's Amazon. And the only reason I say that is because they make it so darn easy to return a product. And for anybody that has had a challenge returning any product to any store anywhere, it's really challenging. And so for them to actually say, hey, we're going to create a brand that makes it easy for anyone globally, for the most part, to be able to get your product returned and get what you want, no questions asked, we're going to make that easy. So that's empathy for the customer too. I think now there's a lot of aspects about the company we could say that they fall short on. That's one that I think they do well. What's the third one? And in the category or the pillar of what might be the hardest, but probably the most important, which is imperfection. Of course, perfection doesn't exist, but sometimes companies embrace imperfection, meaning you just want to love them because they're like the Gaylord Fokker company that just emotes this humanness because they're real people, or the way that they address things, or the way that they respond to an incident or an accident in transparency. What comes up for you in a company that embraces imperfection within their brand?
That's a really, really interesting one. And as you say, it's probably one of the trickiest ones to do because I'm really struggling to, and again, this is a really profound moment for me because I'm struggling to really come up with an example. And that, to me, tells me that there's too many marketers putting a shroud or a cloak over their imperfections. So they're actually not being authentic and honest and true. That's a really interesting one. I guess one here that is coming actually out to me as I kind of described that is in the UK, it was the first and still is the largest and most prolific vegan charity called Viva. And Viva have been around for many, many years, working on animal rights and a whole host of kind of promotional things to really promote veganism sort of here in the UK. But they are very, very open, very authentic. I mean, I guess the nature of the the communications that they do. They're trying to uncover and expose, bad practice, malpractice, and obviously the hurt of animals. But actually, the way that they do it is absolutely raw. They have no problem going raw with their stuff. So it's the imperfections there of the industry in which they're in. And so I suppose for me, that would be the most obvious encounter there. So it isn't necessarily their own imperfections, but they are just being, raw. I think that's probably the right word to describe it as.
Oh, I love it. Another one. You're bringing up so many I haven't heard before. You're really good at this. The one I'll also add on to this might be KFC. The reason I say that, not because I'm not typically a Kentucky Fried Chicken eater, but I love what they did in the UK. Actually, this is years ago. They ran out of chicken because they forgot to order the chicken. And it's ironic that here you have a chicken company, you forget to order the chicken. And instead of, they had to close the stores. And instead of just saying, we had to close and not really giving an insight, they put out an ad and they put it up on their front door. And instead of KFC, they reversed the letters to FCK. And then they put underneath it, who forgets to order the chicken when you're a chicken company? And it was just so transparently magical that you saw this humor come out and the self-deprecation of like what they just did. And, lo and behold, they finally got, chicken and opened the stores back up, and there were lines out the door, and they made back plus more money in less than 10 days for what they lost the week before being closed, all because they owned it. And not just owned it, they made fun of themselves when they did it. So these are I wish they happened more, not that the accidents happen more often or somebody didn't order the chicken, but hey, this happens. And what are we going to do in the moment when it does happen? Or how are we going to project ourselves as that imperfect company? Like, just open up Instagram and you'll get a feel for what people are trying to portray as perfect, right? So this is the opportunity. And like you said, you had a hard time coming up with it. Okay, so now you take all three, combine it into one, and those are really rare unicorn brands of human unicorn brands. So that's the mix. That's the complete mix. What you don't want is, you don't want to be a Facebook. Sorry, Facebook people, if you work there. But here's something for you to work on. Opposite of simplicity, opposite of empathy, and opposite of imperfection. Three things that tie you to something for life and don't bind you through an algorithm. They bind you out of love. They bind you out of connection. That's what you want, because that's the long game. So that's the three pillars: simplicity, empathy, imperfection.
Wow, there's a golden moment for everybody listening here, because I think it's all very well for you and I, Bryan, to sort of be talking, rhetorically and sort of, in theory kind of terms about this whole lovely human to human thing, but actually giving those three questions, which are really poignant and really, really important, I think, for people to reflect on, is just how well, on the scale of 1 to 10, are you guys scoring, on, the simplicity, the empathy, and the imperfection? Because, you've got to be brutally honest with yourselves here. You're not going to be scoring 10 out of 10, are you? I'm not. And I'm sure, Bryan, in your business, you're still working on it. It's a journey, I think, for most of us, isn't it? This is kind of really unpicking and understanding. And once we know where we score there, is it the case then that you take that and then you think, okay, from the customer's perspective, if we're looking at this as a relationship building the intimacy, is it that we want to move from, say, 7 to 8 on that particular measure? And then we can start to create little projects, little campaigns, little activities to really listen and then really kind of uncover how we can make those little steps, because it feels this is incremental change. You can't just suddenly go from 5 to 10, can you, on the scale? So is it little steps?
Yeah. It's everything that we've talked about in this podcast. All those micro moments, all the attention to your brand and understanding, taking a step back, looking at the whiteboard and saying, where are the human moments? It's looking at what your brand represents. It's attaching onto it exactly what you just said, the scoring, and saying, okay, within simplicity, how would I score? Within empathy, how would I score, and imperfection, and then combining the three and saying, okay, where's the opportunity? And when you can start to raise just even little 1-degree shifts within your brand, you're going to create a lifelong brand for your customer.
Yeah, I wanted to just pause there just slightly because I know that is a little moment that we are going to be clipping as a short and sharing with everybody from here till eternity, I think, because that to me, that is the essence of pure marketing. We can dress this up with all the, oh, you do this in social, you do this in product development, blah, 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 blah. What you've just described there, Bryan, I think that is the essence of good marketing. I'm so glad that we're having this conversation, because I think with the way that kind of technology is emerging, and I just want to ask you briefly about your view on AI, because AI is not human. We're going to need to kind of retain this balance between human and the amazing opportunities that are coming through with the tech right now. And this is going to be an important question, I think. So what is Bryan Kramer's take on AI in the light of everything that we've just discussed?
Well, where I see it, where it's been, where it's at, and where it's going, I'll give you a very, very short, because that could be a whole nother episode, answer to each of those. So where it's been, we used it, I think it was like about 8 or 9 years ago when my agency created the first IBM global influencer campaign, and we ended up using it to help us identify who the up and coming influencers were, not the influencers who already existed, but who were they about to be, because we wanted them to be excited about being futurists that we could invite into this program. Again, another podcast, so we'll have to talk about that. But it did end up generating over $700 million out of understanding through AI who the up and coming influencers were. Now, where are we now? We're in a place where it is our brainstorming buddy. It is not yet able to create something and replicate humanity. It's not there. It is our brainstorming buddy. I have yet, and I dare anybody to tell me that they have yet to have a produced 100% imperfect, simplistic, and empathetic approach to creating content or something that comes out perfectly the way that I would say it. Just isn't there. But will it help me as a brainstorming buddy to get past the blank page or to create something that I need to create? Absolutely. And so then now I can take that and I can move a little bit faster. Maybe I can be a little human more often, because it's not taking me as long to write or to respond or to create. And so that's the human moment that we never were able to scale. You can't scale more people. You can't scale more as a person, but you can scale more time if you have something that can aid you in doing that. That's what AI is here for. Now, where it's going, I'd be holding a crystal ball if I told you. I think that's just going to get better. It's going to get to know us better. It's going to get to know our language better. It's going to get to iron out those little things, but still become our assistant, our buddy, our way of reflecting without having to go outside of ourselves. We can use this as a way of extending ourselves. And so there are a lot of different avenues. This is a lot like the Renaissance, I think, again, where this could go and where it could lead. I don't have that crystal ball, but I still think it's just going to get better as our personal assistant to be able to help us create more and extend ourselves more to more people.
So the advice then, I guess, just to summarize that bit then, is let's stay human, but let's assume that we have an AI version of human as our little assistant. So it's not going to take over us. It's not going to take our jobs or anything like that. It's about staying human, continuing with the relationship. And this can help us become probably more efficient in the way that we do that. I like that. It's a nice balance. Keeps it in its place, but gets the best value for everybody, including the AI. So I love that. I want to connect people with you, Bryan. This is obviously a conversation I think a lot of people will be looking to take on to the next level, potentially. You have a H2H Business Accelerator as part of your website, I understand. So I want to get people kind of pushing in your direction. Where should they go?
I'll tell you what, right now, what I'm doing is I'm meeting with, and I'm happy to meet with anybody one-on-one. irregardless of the accelerator, and help them make a tough decision. Typically, there's people, most marketers, salespeople, anybody is at a fork in the road. And so I've owned several companies and done all the things that it takes to build and run and market and sell and create. And so now what I'd love to do is give back. And so if anybody wants to spend time to help them create that, you can email me at Bryan with a Y, Bryan, Bryan, at bryankramer.com, or go to my website and just go to the contact and submit there. So either way, human to human style, I will respond and we'll have a conversation and figure out how to make that best next decision for you. That's where it all starts, is what's the decision that I need to make? What's the fork in the road, and how do we get you to make that so that you can start taking action?
Bryan, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. I think it's just lovely to kind of share lots of these ideas with a like-minded marketer, because I think, you clearly and utterly get this whole idea of keeping things human. And I just love that whole kind of intimacy thing that you talk about, but simplicity, empathy, and imperfection. See, it's easy to remember, people. I will put the notes about that and kind of obviously all the links and stuff into the episode description below. So if you're watching or listening to this, you can follow up that. And yes, get that flip chart, that whiteboard out, and begin to plot this out and take Bryan's advice. This is clearly, geniusly simple, but so powerful for all of us. So Bryan Kramer, thank you very much for your time.
Hey, thank you for your time and for your questions. I love conversational interviews. This has just been so magical, and really appreciate it. And I'll say one last thing and leave everybody with this. If you just remember one thing from everything that we just talked about, remember that being human is everyone's competitive advantage, especially right now. If you want to stand out, do this, because everything else is going to be automated. Everything else is going to be put into AI. Everything else is going the way of technology. So stand out as a human and watch everything grow.